Welcome to Dark Loops Productions, Dragons in the House. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher at Illinois State University. And today we discuss episode 2, The Rogue Prince. Colleagues, please tell the audience something about who you are and why you like this show. And we'll start with Cianna.
Hi, my name is Cianna Greaves. I'm a public radio producer and podcast producer out of Chicago, Illinois. I'm really bad at lighting. So
No, it looks great.
It's in the middle of the podcast.
It looks great.
And I am enjoying the show so far.
Yeah.
I like the Game of Thrones universe, I guess. I guess I'm still very much intrigued by the amazing world building of George R.R. Martin. I'm so far, we're 2 episodes in. I don't have that one thing that I'm really attached to yet, the one character, the one storyline yet, but I am enjoying the continuation of this universe.
Fantastic. And how about you, Stanford?
Hi, I'm Dr. Stanford Carpenter. I'm a cultural anthropologist, chair of the Black and Brown Comic Arts Festival, and manager of community engagement for the University of Chicago Oriental Institute. I gotta say, I am liking at least this iteration of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. I'm liking it because we've seen very little magic. I like that this is focusing on almost like a fantasy Shakespearean drama about succession. I like those kind. I've always liked those kind of stories. I like that this has more political intrigue.
Yeah, they definitely are focusing on the political intrigue. It is spreading out a little more than the first episode, and we're meeting new characters, the Crab King, and all these sorts of things. So we're just going to do favorite scene, favorite line, favorite character, whichever we want to talk about, and the floor is open.
I guess I want to start off with favorite scene. Not necessarily my favorite scene, but there were a lot of red flags. Episode. But there are a lot of moments that made me really just go, huh. And then I watched the after show discussion with the showrunners, and then I went, oh. I'm going to start with gender. When Allison and Rhaenyra are in the sept, praying for their
praying by the candles, talking by the candles, yeah.
Allison, who is aged 20 years from episode 1 to episode 2, she says to, excuse me, I'm sorry for not being so organized. Her quote, she says to Rhaenyra, my own father does not, know the language of girls either. So this was a very gendered episode of House of the Dragon.
Oh, right? Very, very,
from beginning to end.
Yes.
And I have a few thoughts of this, and I kind of want to open this discussion up. First, I want to start with this quote of fathers not knowing the language of daughters. And as a daddy's girls, and I know you guys are girl dads, how are you feeling about the portrayal of fatherhood, specifically girl dads in this show? And I'm looking at that, and even in the entire Game of Thrones universe, I really thought about this a lot.
I love it. Stanford, you go first.
Westerosi dads aren't great, but then when you juxtapose the father-daughter trope to the overdone, and I think a more respectfully done father-son trope that we see a lot of in sci-fi. I mean, just your thoughts of how they're handling it.
I've got 2 thoughts. One, I think what gets me is what underscores the absence of this is, for me, is that when I look back in time, I see worlds where the mortality rates, childbirth mortality rates for mothers were super high. So just with that alone, we know there are a crap ton of women who are girls who are being raised by single dads, right? Because the mother, so many mothers aren't surviving. So I completely feel you on that, because I'm like, okay, now what type of stories are we getting? And one of the things I find troubling is that the only times that we are seeing the stories of girl dads is when the girls are trying to be boys, or trying to assume the roles of boys, or trying to do the things that boys do. And what bothers me about that is that the dynamic of that is one of girls trying to reach their father, girls trying to be men, girls trying to be something else, right? And so to the extent that we even have those stories, it's always about girls trying to be something else. When girls are just trying to be what they want to be, trying to be girls, trying to be women, it's like, it just kind of, it like just floats off away, right? And plot wise. So that's my thing, because I think that the stories I want to see are stories where the fathers actually reach out to their children, reach out to their daughters.
So I'm going to agree with you. I very much enjoyed this episode, and a lot of it had to do with Rihanna saying, just being who she is, right? And so what I get, if I have a concern, I don't mind us seeing a story. I should say that that would have been ironic. I love the idea of seeing stories of strong people, strong women, and what does that mean to tell a story about strong men and strong women? What I do get concerned about is this idea that, well, that's just the way it was, and women had to do this or they wouldn't be heard. And there's a sort of mental retconning then that you have to do if you're watching the show, that, oh, we got to reorganize this in terms of how they were thinking in the past. You know, as a father of two women, I raised them to be Rihannas. I raised them to be badasses, right? But that's because we talked about quite often the politics of the world that they were living in. You know, and I'm not a king, so maybe there are different things I have to protect, than a king. At the same time, I get concerned that if people are watching this show and they're not having this conversation, that we then, like I said, mentally retcon, oh, it was then, and we've got to be real about then. And then I get concerned, well, what's the story that we want to see now? And, you know, I thought Ned Stark and Arya Stark's story was pretty good. I think Ned really knew of Arya's abilities and coached her on those abilities. Now, he was always coaching her in relation to the context they lived in.
Right.
But at least we saw a father who was reaching out to her and letting her know there's a certain lay of the land, change it if you want, and here are the risks. And I don't see Valerius doing that at all. I see him being a fairly reactive father. So what I want to see is stories about proactive fathers, both in terms of their young men, their sons and their daughters.
Right.
And because this show is so focused on power, right? There's so many other people doing so many other things in Westeros that we're not seeing, that allows us to watch a story about power. That's the lens that we're seeing. So how do I say this? You know, we went through this with Dany for 7 seasons, right? And if they're going to build up a woman power narrative and then end it like they did last time, I'm going to be really, really pissed and disappointed.
I agree. Like we see a lot of strong women in the Game of Thrones universe, and their stories all end in tragedy.
Yeah.
You know, and then looking at the after show, again, the issue of not having any women running, you know, is this really, and it makes you think, like, is this really a story about women when you don't really have any women contributing to this story, right? So I'm concerned about what the payoff is going to be. Sure, Rhaenyra is a badass, but, you know, is she going to make it? Well, saw Dany stabbed by Jon Snow, betrayed by Jon Snow. A house fell on Cersei.
Right.
Bran takes the throne.
Because they disqualified all the women.
Yep.
They actually marginalized them to an extreme that said, no, not that one. And what they never really did was then what the hell does good power look like? Right? Because they put the world
It
in the
certainly
hands of
doesn't look like
Bran.
Bran. It
But
they're
certainly
also
doesn't
not-
look like Bran. Bran, who allowed millions of people to die.
The most
It's-
emotionally unavailable person in the entire realm. That's the person we need to be philosopher king.
The most
Stanford,
evil
Well,
person in the realm.
right.
But they're also,
exactly.
I mean, every story every woman who you mentioned, right? Like ultimately, it's a story of a girl growing from being a tomboy to an empowered woman, right? So it's like Arya wanted to do all of these things that men do. She wanted to become a knight, right? And even in Daenerys' story, it's like, in her ascension to the throne, all this had me thinking about San Diego Comic-Con and one of my all-time favorite, it was just this past San Diego Comic-Con, my all-time favorite cosplays. And it was this man who was like over 6 feet tall, really big burly guy with a really thick beard, walking down the street holding hands with his daughter. Yeah. And both of them were dressed in matching Princess Leia outfits, like the flowing white dress and the buns the buns. And I was thinking to myself when I saw that, I'm like, that's a man who's going to raise a strong woman, right? Because he's coming as much because he's coming to her. And I think that's what I find to be really interesting is that he's coming to her on something that matters to her. That's going to teach her something. And that's what I'm not seeing in any of the stories that we've outlined. That moment where the girl, the young woman is truly centered in terms of her interests, her desires, the potential imagery around her, all of that stuff. I'm hoping that we get more, but even when we come to me talking about my favorite character of the show, it's kind of where I have my concerns. At the same time, I gotta say, I am enjoying what's happening with the show in terms of like exploring politics, exploring all these relationships, but yeah, I still have questions.
Well, I really am glad that you brought this up, Cianna, because the question is, if you're going to tell stories about power, right? Like Succession, right? You're going to tell a story about power, and then you're going to make this case that a gender's been left out of power, and you've got to make a decision as a writer. Are you going to judge what power is and how it's handled and just tell a story about power you judge? Or are you going to show power be used in a way that you respect as a creator?
Right.
And I'm not sure we're going to see a story about power that the creators respect.
No. And I think that's what happened when you have, a treatise on women written by men, unfortunately.
Right.
Is where we are.
And the other problem with this and a lot of movies and stories like this is that it's written about some fantastic past, and we often explain away things in the plot of like, well, that's what it was like back then. Yes. Without acknowledging the fact that the very past they're constructing is really a projection of the present.
Yep.
Everything about the way fantasy is built, it's built more around a projection of the present than it is a real understanding of how that past may have been, right? Like the fact that in these types of environments you have scores of men raising young women alone. And you don't see it. You see like the odd man raising a woman alone who's looking for another woman to help out. Well,
Yeah.
That's not really how it ends up happening. You know, people end up forming some kind of family. Even in that, someone's forming some kind of family unit in which his gender is going to be outnumbered. You know, so all of that, you know, but we don't talk about that. We don't talk about it in terms of like facts on the ground. We talk about it in terms of facts in the now, or ideas about the now that we want to talk about using that.
So let's do this. See, I'm like I said, I'm really glad you raised this, because I had these questions as I was watching it, right? And here's what I like. I don't think power is going away in the human condition. I don't think power is an evil. I don't think power corrupts absolutely. I think that power exists in every human being. And when we scale it up to groups, it reflects individuals coming together and blah, blah, blah. Someone's going to ride that dragon because some shit needs to end in this world, or not. In other words, the idea that there's a utopian space we get to that's void of human conflict is not my feeling of reality. So I think power is real. I think power is going to continue to be used. And so the issue is, how do we manage it? And I got to tell you, when Rihanna says, Dad, you have dragon riders, send us.
Right.
That's confidence and power. And she
Otto
did
and
it.
Viserys go.
Well, but that's the thing. So the brilliance of the writing there is she's the most confident person in that room.
They're like, oh, that's so cute.
No, exactly. And then she shows up and she says she solves the problem without bloodshed. And then I'm not trying to say right or wrong. What I'm saying is I very much appreciated her character. And she seems to be making choices that reflect the knowledge of power, and doesn't seem to be acting too childish with it at all.
A knowledge that her father does not possess.
Not at all.
In the least.
That's why he's not going to last.
It is, I mean, he is beyond feckless. He's just afraid of everything. He's afraid
He's
of
a nice guy.
with his daughter. He's afraid of women. He's afraid of actually making any kind of decision. He's afraid of, you know, any show of strength in the stepsodes. I mean, I am surprised he made it this far.
And I think what's also interesting is that, you know, the more I think about Damon's character, right?
Yes.
I actually started to feel a bit of sympathy for his character, in that he is his brother's sin eater. He does all the things that his brother won't do.
Right.
And is vilified for it. Now, granted, doing the things his brother wouldn't do has turned him into a reprehensible human being. But I think that there's definitely something there that I'm hoping the writers really pick up and delve into a little bit more.
I think they're going to. I mean, that final scene, right, with Damon and Corlys, I loved how that scene played out, in the sense that Corlys knows the power dynamics of Westeros. He knows he's being played by a feckless king. I mean, Damon even came out and said, it's not one of his character strengths. And Corlys says, what? He goes, being king.
Right.
Right. So Damon knows, I'm going to use the word knows, and that's judgy on my part, that his brother is not the kind of king that the times demand. And
everybody knows. Everybody understands Westeros' power dynamic.
And that's what Corlys is telling him.
Viserys Targaryen. And it is really infuriating to watch.
Yeah. Well, they already, it's clear that the show is going to cover generations, right? Because we've already seen the next actresses for those two lead female roles. And so he's not going to last. And
I mean,
well,
as we're talking about this, I was thinking about for me, the character that stole the show, and my favorite quote that came from this character, and it still moves in the same direction, but from a slightly different perspective. And it's Massaria. That would be Damon's paramour, who is always reminded that she is a whore, and reminds us that she's a whore. And the moment after they have the confrontation over the dragon's egg, where she says, where she's expressing her displeasure to Damon, and she says, "I've been sold as property more times than I can count, beginning in a homeland I can no longer recall. Most of my years have been spent living in terror. I don't come into your service wanting power or wanting gold or power or station. I came to be liberated from fear." And I thought, wow, like that was the moment that spoke to me.
Yeah.
Because it makes so many other things make sense. Because you start asking yourself in a situation like this, why are people even following these people, right? Why are they, what are their motivations? And it also reminds us that ultimately this is a story of the 1%, truly a story of the 1%. That if you start getting into the lives of the common folk, right? They're trying to navigate the Game of Thrones at a much different level, but they are trying to navigate. And this whole thing about living in constant fear and terror, it really struck me.
It was one of the contrasts we've seen to the 1% so far, right? That's what, this show is all about, power. And now, we got 5, 6 seasons, 7 seasons of the last show. So it's hard for me to organize my memory around early episodes versus the whole thing. I just had a sense coming out of the first series that those fears you're mentioning were much more prominent in the show than they are now. Because I said this is only 2 episodes, but I think when we start seeing more of the Crab King, we're going to see that they have some legitimate claim about past atrocities, and they're on that would be what I would predict, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the only person we really saw who showed any real concern for the people, the small folk on the realm, was Varys.
Yep.
In Game of Thrones. And
well, yeah. Well, the thing is, is
awful ending his story.
But I think it's important, because without it, it takes it. I love how it answered the question of why the small folk even follow these people, right? At a certain point, you think to yourself, well, we can just sit down and not even worry about it. Why are people following? Well, they're looking for something. They see this service. They see this life of servitude as a route to freedom from the thing, freedom from the fear that this world presents them.
But I mean, that is sort of the situation we find ourselves in as well. Who do the services that our taxes pay for? Schools, police, fire department. Those things are not for the 1%.
Right. If
you have enough money, you're automatically sending your children to the best school. You have private school. You don't have to worry about those things.
Nope.
All of those things are for the benefit of us, the small folk. So I mean, yeah, I hear what you're saying. They're just trying to really survive, the Game of Thrones. And they're at the whim of the 1% who are,
and what I'd add to that is, when you ask the 1%, what are you doing? Well, we're protecting the realm. Right. And you have a culture, basically, you have cooperation via fear, right? That's ultimately the simplest way to manage power, right? Is to just terrify everybody. Yeah. And that's kind of what's going on here.
And every 4 years we co-sign, yes, absolutely. Y'all are the best ones for the job.
Well, we do have to say that within the last month, we've seen certain 1% elected groups passed some major reform. And so it's not quite Game of Thrones. It's not quite, but yeah, absolutely. All right, other favorite line, favorite scene, favorite character. I'm going to give a shout out to Lord Lionel Strong. He's the uncompromised small council member. The king comes to him and says, "I want an honest opinion." And the guy just talks straight up Game of Thrones. All right, this is the case. This is the case. This is the case. You should marry her. And the king asked for it. And I'm not saying the king should have. What I do like about Martin's writing is that the guy made his own choice, and then what we're going to see are the unintended consequences of that choice, and they're going to be politically huge. He's going to lose his throne probably. Again, there's book readers out there saying, "Man, you guys should have read the book," but going to lose his throne because he played the Game of Thrones. He made a move that isn't going to work.
Well, but I think what struck me about the choices in this situation was that they explored so few choices.
There are so many choices. There were so many ways this could have worked out in his favor.
Right. Like here's what he could have done. Instead of entertaining marrying Corliss's daughter, he could have married his daughter off to Corliss's son.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have solidified Corliss and the Queen Who Never Was, and as supporters of that, because then they would be supporting their son being king, right?
And that would have been an extra layer of protection for Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
And a massive swell of support for her claim to the throne. Ugh.
Yeah, it would have been that would have been a really simple one that would have solved everything. Of course, that's assuming that Rhaenyra and their boy child want to get married, but at the very least, it would be two people of the same age being consorts, right? Or relatively same age. The other thing is, back in times like this when marriages were really a part of contracts, he could have married the child and then sent her off somewhere so there's no possibility of there being, so that it truly was seen as a marriage of contract, right? Like there are ways in which he could have handled that, would have made it much more palatable to him and probably to us as audience members.
The one he picked is 15, man.
I know. That's the thing. It's like, I'm not going to marry you because I'm against grown men marrying children. All right, bring in the 15-year-old.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
no. So what do you guys think of the conversation between Rihanna and her aunt?
Oh, Rhaenys and Rhaenyra.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like we covered most of that already, right? Again, this is, Rhaenys saying that this is a man's world. I think it was Alan Taylor. I don't want to be wrong, but one of the showrunners said that conversation was supposed to be illustrative of not just how men are being treated by women, but how women treat other women. Which again, a bit okay. I thought Rhaenys did what any aunt, would do, and she warned her daughter that the cards are not being stacked in your favor, and you have to be aware, and it is going to require bold action for you to actually see this claim to the throne through.
Absolutely.
I think Rhaenyra did what any naive, teenager would say. Well, I'm sorry it didn't work out for you, but it's definitely going to be different for me.
Yeah, exactly. No,
I don't think it's indicative of how women treat, other women. I just think that's, seeing life through the lens of a teenager, a privileged teenager.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. Well, that's what you run into when you when you say what your work is supposed to be saying. It's like, you didn't have to edit. You just could have let it just be. You didn't write it. George R. Martin wrote it, and you're editing and adapting it for the screen. So saying those things.
I feel like with Damon's mistress, Poirot needs every chance that people get to remind her that she was passed over. It's like,
right.
they cannot help themselves. The next person who calls her the queen, like, we get it. I know.
What bothers me
I was passed over for the series. It's upsetting.
What bothers me is there are two characters that are always reminded of their place. Through a name or a slur, and it's the whore and the queen who never was. I mean, it's that kind of bothers me too. It's like these characters, I feel like they're constantly the way they're constantly being mocked in ways that other characters in ways that like look at Otto Hightower. Like he's like actually he's so feckless that he makes his feckless master look strong, right?
I'm not sure he's feckless, but go ahead. But he's playing the game. He wants his daughter to be the queen.
He's just marginally better than the fairies. Not much. I don't know what he was thinking when he showed up at Dragonstone.
Well, he was thinking that there was going to be a fight and he was going to win.
But they knew he had a dragon
and gold cloaks. What? Just like a terrible miscalculation.
He did. I mean, I'm not trying to say I like the guy at all. What I am saying though is he did push certain levers in certain ways where the king is now picking his daughter to be the queen. That didn't happen by chance. He's the one who told his daughter.
I recognize that, but
I mean, we don't like him, but at the same time,
he didn't do it through even a minor display of courage, right? I mean,
he's the king's hand, right?
But that is why I describe him as feckless as well, right?
Yeah, you think your daughter is not like,
Now, see, I think he's the little finger of the show. I think he's playing the game with the power he has.
He thinks he's Tywin Lannister, but he's not.
Well, no, I don't disagree with that. I just he's not, but he's not stupid, and he's not random. And
I didn't say stupid or random. I said feckless.
Well, I know, but I don't
think him leading the King's Guard to Dragonstone without a dragon rider is literally the most random thing.
All right then.
Why would you go up against Daemon Targaryen and his gold cloaks? You get there, all you do is insult his bride-to-be.
Yeah, it's also someone wrote the character that way. I mean, so I don't know. I mean, it's almost as if that scene was written more for Rihanna's
sure, but I mean, we're talking about
benefit.
Otto Hightower, and I'm not really that impressed.
If we take all the data that the show presents us, his daughter's going to be the queen, and he had something to do with that. That's all.
I'm not necessarily sure Alicent is cut out for.
Well,
that might not work out too well for Alicent. I think ultimately what he got was young Aegon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to in any way support the guy. He's playing the Game of Thrones from the position that he's in. That's all.
And I think just like the fairies, he's feckless in that he, is willing to put a loved one to the sword to reach his the way he's sacrificing Alicent, very similar to the way we saw Viserys sacrifice Emma.
I guess we're disagreeing on the use of the word feckless. That's all. Because feckless to me means kind of unmotivated and random and not having much of a plan. And dude's got a plan, and he may be a creep, but so are all these people for the most part. That's all.
The oncoming feckless is not as being afraid of taking account for tough choices. Like
Mhm.
there's not a lot of accountability in him. He does do a lot of things behind the scenes,
Mhm.
but it's like, but that's actually part of the problem, right? He's operating behind the scenes, but he's never putting himself in a position where he's
Mm.
responsible for a tough choice. It's
Mhm.
like, it's like, it's like he didn't even really tell his daughter
Yeah.
what to do. He just kind of was like, well, wear that nice dress and go over there. It's like he can't just say to her, look, you need to seduce the king, right? Like he's doing it in a way in
Yeah.
which he's not owning it. Um
Yep.
I'm thinking of feckless and just lacking character.
I'm not going to even, I'm done with the argument, you guys. But show me someone who's not, I mean, the minute we
But-
start talking feckless, our values get put into what we think
True.
having courage and
True, but-
being responsible means. And all these guys are marrying off young girls. They're all feckless.
Well,
I mean,
let me put up a contrast. And we didn't see a lot from his character, but Sir Christian Cole, right? Like that, like he had just a couple of lines, but the interesting thing was his exchange with Damon.
Yep.
He easily could have been quiet, and nothing would have happened, right?
mhm.
It was interesting, like the way he was like, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I knocked you off your horse. It's obvious they're setting this character up for some
Sure.
for some really interesting things going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like really that's the character that people are looking for. I mean, I think the king is tiresome, right?
Yeah.
You can count on him to make a bad decision, or to take a good decision and execute it poorly. And yeah, I mean, he and Renarius, they're the few characters that you kind of are looking at, like, okay, when the what hits the fan.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people going to stand upright, look into the fire, and go forward. So yeah, I'm looking forward. I honestly am really looking forward to next week, because I want to get a sense of, I want to see what's going out I want to see what's going on out in the hinterlands, or hinterwaters, as they say.
Yeah, and then we also have this. Just there are some families that are willing to do things for power that others aren't. Everybody isn't selling off their daughters. The Starks weren't selling off their daughters. Olenna Tyrell killed Joffrey rather than see Marjorie married to an abusive type. You know what I mean? So everyone's not just selling off their daughters in the name of power. It's there is definitely a line between right and wrong that exists even in Westeros.
I'm not sure what to say.
I think Mike dropped on that one.
No, it's just,
No, I just don't. Yeah. I don't look to any of these characters for moral guidance.
I don't think anybody is. I'm certainly not, but I just, Otto Hightower just isn't it for me.
I didn't say he was it for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I said the dude has a plan. He's playing the Game of Thrones with the power that he has. That's what I said. I'm not saying I like him or that he's morally a role model. I'm just saying, Littlefinger, he's doing what he can do to get his piece of the power. All right, then. Anything else you guys liked about the show?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens next episode. I predict that Daemon and Lena Valerian will end up being.
Yeah. I think they're going to take care of or at least approach the Crab King and use that as a way to improve or influence their position in the court and in the Westeros power structure.
I can't wait to see what the Crab King is about. I think there's going to be an interesting story there.
Yeah, maybe he's like the Night King of this version, or at least introducing us to what the Night King world would be for this version.
Yeah, I'm ready to leave King's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I've seen some previews of episodes to come, and the show is so much more bigger. It's so much bigger and way more expansive. So I'm good on Thanksgiving for now. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, same here.
All righty then.
Ready
Go
to
ahead.
see the rest of the Westeros that Viserys was building
Yeah,
in
exactly.
his chamber, and he was showing Allison all the wonders of stop motion animation. What did you think of the intro?
So I liked it better than last week's. I like them using the theme music. And as I said last week, I liked the Game of Thrones world building model thing at the beginning of the series, the first series. So I actually thought, why wouldn't you use this in the second one? That's how I felt, and I enjoyed it. And then I'm going to figure out what all those little icons mean, over the course of the season.
I was of two minds of it. I mean, on one hand, it was, I won't lie. When I first heard it, I was like, oh, wow, they're here, right? But there's a part of me that wants them to find ways to really distinguish this show a little more from Game of Thrones. I mean, so that's kind of where I'm at. I both love and am concerned at the same time, because what I don't want this to become is kind of like Game of Thrones light, and I'm looking, that's why I'm looking forward to the Crab King, and I'm hoping the Crab King is not just another version of the Night Walkers, right? I'm hoping that there's some sort of legitimate gripe there that just, that makes sense, especially in this much more political storyline. I mean, but I gotta say, it's like, the intro to Game of Thrones was a work of art. So I can't blame them for referring back to it.
And they're referring to the whole genre in the title as Game of Thrones.
Right.
So they're all in on the Game of Thrones vibing on this. And the smart thing, and I am using the word smart, about using the theme song again, was for all of us who watched the first series, that theme song is part of the experience, right? And it's such a great dum, 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 dum. It's just a great intro tune. So they're kind of rekindling our experience of the show last time, every time they play that theme song. So I was surprised they didn't use it week one.
Well, because they probably didn't want us to rekindle the last season.
I don't hear that song and feel bad. I see those images from the last season and I feel bad, but I don't, the song itself doesn't really do that for me. Yeah.
I mean, Game of Thrones is the blueprint for this entire universe that they're building. So
and
we have to deal with it. We will constantly be harkening back to Game of Thrones, a Song of Ice and Fire, rather.
Yeah, I know. Well said.
They did it in episode 1. That's the only reason we're here.
There you go. All righty then. So that about wraps it up for this episode. Cianna, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at CC Greaves. That's CICIGREAVES.
Fantastic. How about you, Stanford?
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Clubhouse, and TikTok at SW Carpenter.
You can find all episodes of Dragons in the House at Dark Loops Productions on YouTube. If you want to write in, tell us we got it right, tell us we got it wrong, write into darkloopsproductions@gmail.com or leave a comment on this YouTube page, and we'll be sure to read it and riff on it at the end of our next episode. So there it is, from all of us to all of you. Big hugs, and remember, all men must die. See you next time.
Bye.